What up, Unstoppables? I am on site in Phoenix, Arizona at Restaurant Systems Pro and Serve. I'm here with my man, Fred Langley, and we're about to dive deep into the world of Restaurant Systems Pro. Fred, what are you going to show us today?
I'm going to show you everything, and it's a lot, so we're going to break it up into pieces.
Nice.
Too, so you don't have to sit here for 2 hours and go through all of it to try to find what you need. We're going to break it up and organize it for you so you can come find what you need so we can serve you well.
Awesome. Well, let's not waste any time. Let's get right into it.
Okay, so we're gonna jump into probably the number one thing that every restaurant has to do is budget, to set a plan for success. If you don't set a plan for success, you're not going to achieve it. You have to have it set out. And I'm really proud of the budgeting system we have. It's actually one of the first software tools that we built in the desktop version, where you'd put a disk into your computer and download it.
Man, have you guys come a long way.
Some people out there probably have never even known what I'm talking about.
Remember when it was cutting edge? You're like, wow, we are so advanced.
Software on a CD. Yeah. So anyway, so back in the day, we did do that. That was one of our first ventures, and it's because it's one of the most important things a restaurant can be doing. So we'll start with that, with step one, with budgeting and what that looks like. So we're in our system here. I'm going to log into an example here. So we do have a fake restaurant that we use. I'll jump into some real restaurants too if I have some restaurant examples where there's real-time data and I have permission to share. We'll do that. So this is a fake restaurant that we created. That's an old restaurant that David Scott Peters used to work at back in the day. He was a manager at, and so we have that from day one that we created as our example system. So in the system built in, one of the things, we used to have our Budget Creator Pro as a separate software, and now it is built into the system, and that's actually more convenient because it's connected to the system so that we can have a big picture goal for your restaurant and then have systems that run around and are attached to the budget and where you can delegate down from big picture goals to writing a host schedule.
Okay.
And break that down.
So the way that this layout right here, this dashboard on this left hand column over here, are these literally just all the systems in the suite of tools?
Yep.
Is that how you think about it?
Yep, exactly. There's systems and subsystems within each section there. So all of those, like even if you click up here and we're navigating, you just got labor systems here. And so within labor system, there's a whole bunch of different systems that we have for you, from retail systems and prime cost stuff. And this is a really cool one. We talk about all of our coaching stuff where there's like resources that you have that you can download. You can see it's downloading a whole bunch of stuff. So we have like our catering systems and forms and checklists and training programs and recorded workshops and core value, writing your core values and how to write it, and all this training is just a resource for all of my customers that lives in there. We have our dashboard here, and we're actually working on our dashboard to change some things here. This is one thing I'm really proud of here, is there's this group training that we do daily, and that's where we go on every day, and the links are here, and you can even see we record them. So even if you're not able to make, you have a question for support and you can't you have a catering, you have to take your kid to soccer practice, you have something, you can just send a question into support and it will get answered live on these trainings that happen every single day. Yesterday we had like 30 or 40 people show up to the training, and we just had multiple coaches go in there and take care of everybody. So it's working out really well. You don't have to wait to schedule an appointment with a coach or anything like that. You can just jump right in there as well. Another thing I'm really proud of, and we're gonna test it out live right now, is there's this bubble down here, and this bubble here is, I'm gonna say hello. Oops, I chop better than I type. So I'm literally going in here. We asked you to put like your restaurant code and all that identifying stuff in here, but I'm testing it out with my team. We have cubicles all out there where there's somebody that is out there to answer it, and we're usually really good about getting in here. And when this is being answered, it's not some sort of chat bot. So I'm gonna let them know it's me now.
I assumed it was an AI that you guys were using.
No, that's actually a real person. Okay. And then I don't know who it is, so I'm going to say who dis. So we have that. Yeah, they're answering.
to it's Jeff.
Jeff.
It's Jeff.
Okay.
So Jeff's back there, and so we have it. If there's multiple people asking, it goes from desk to desk to desk to desk.
Okay.
So that the coaches can make sure that we're hitting it too. It even notifies them on their phones, and so we just really have it set up to be able to show up and give support, because all these systems they could be difficult, and so we want to give the support to be able to utilize the tool to its best ability.
What is the core value we serve?
Serve them well. Serve them as restaurateurs.
Yes.
And that's what we do. So we'd actually, as Eric's saying, we have our core values on the wall there, and by me taking a big marker and writing over the top of them, serve them, it doesn't cancel those other ones out. It just emphasizes that our overarching, hi Eric, there we go. Our overarching core value is to show up and serve the restaurant industry at a high level too. That's our overarching goal.
So speaking of high level, any other high level things that you want to go over just to get the big picture, and before we start diving into each one of these individual systems?
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll get into everything. The overarching thing is that there's a lot, but you have the support and training to go with it. We have excellent onboarding to where you get the resources to learn it all. It's also, we don't charge you an arm and a leg for the onboarding too. It's actually nothing. When you become our customer, and we show up to give you the support you need. We have daily trainings that are happening. A part of our restaurant mastery program is not just like you guys have heard me talk about it, and we offer it on the podcast. But one of the things that it also is a training ground for your managers. There's turnover in the restaurant industry. You have people that move on, that go open a new store, and you have a new manager taking place. You're growing, you add a manager. You have a manager that quits and leaves, and it's like, and a lot of times you're just stuck with your, sorry.
That wasn't a fart
long legs. That wasn't a fart. Excuse me.
That was a mic boom swinging.
So yeah, my big feet over here. So a lot of times what happens is it becomes a hassle, like, oh, great, now I got to train them all on all these systems. Well, guess what? We do that for you. And so you can just put your managers into the training. A lot of times they have a good foundation because they've been using it as employees. They've been using the scheduling system as employee. They've been using checklist systems and employees and inventory stuff. And it's just a matter of them starting to expand on that knowledge and get into the numbers a little bit. Yeah,
I love it. Let's get into it.
Okay, so I guess real quick here on the dashboard, there's some cool things that we've added here where there's anytime a new product goes into your system, it's right there for you to be able to see. And then any price changes that are happening in your products, it'll go from the top price change down to the smallest price change over the last 30 days. So that's right there on a dashboard for you to be able to see that. And those are important things to monitor. It's by percentage, so let's say that I have a case of avocados goes from $50 to $53, right? That's a $3 price change. But then I have pork butt go from $1 a pound to $1.20 a pound, right? So if we do it by percentage, because it's important that I know that's a 20% price increase on that pork butt versus, even though it's only a $3, even the $3 is more than the 20 cents on that case of avocados, right? So that 20 cents on the pound of pork is a lot more of an impact on your business than the $3 for the case of avocados, right? So it's all by percentages.
So if they exceed that 20% increase, will it show up here? Is that what's going on?
So watch here. So it's kind of it's over here. How do I see it? I'm gonna create some space on this. We're on a small screen here, but here it kind of goes here, and that's showing the percentage change all the way to the right there. So that's a 50% price change. It went from $10 to $15, so it's a 50% change.
So all the items on this list
are ranked by percentage. Yeah,
were changes that happened.
Yeah,
Do you get push notifications on top of this?
So you get daily email with a summary of all your price changes as well, too. So it's right at your fingertips, and then you can see it right on the dashboard as well, too. So what that means is anytime you buy a product, that product is coming into the system through invoicing, whether it's EDI with a vendor, whether it's the scan and using the AI technology to scan the invoice, or if it's just a weird one and it's a real person having to read it and input it. Those price changes are recorded automatically. It updates recipe costing cards. It updates inventory automatically. You don't have to do anything but scan your invoice.
Got it. Cool.
Yeah. And it's recording all that data there for you. Too. So, I always want to stress, kind of the top items that give people the biggest bang for their buck. So, when we do that, I kind of start there. And so, like I said, like budgeting is like that one thing that is going to, like, setting a goal and setting a standard and where you're at is the important thing. So one thing that's cool about this is we talked about in the network, in the network here, what am I doing wrong? On clicking that, sorry. There we go. In the network, we talked about me going on weekly, maybe like analyzing your P&L and all that. Well, that's something that is one of the first things we do for every client that we bring along is we analyze their P&L.
Okay.
We set a budget standard that is, we're not worried about the numbers. We're just looking at recording where you're at today, and then we do a meeting with you to set some goals on where we can take you in steps. It doesn't happen overnight. Like the restaurant business, when we get people to 20% profit, it's not just one thing that gets them there.
It's not paying a monthly bill.
Yeah.
You can't just pay for Restaurant Systems Pro and have it just like work magic. Like I like to say it's the guide wire through the obstacle. It's going to give you the framing and the path to take to do the things.
It'd be equivalent to paying for a trainer and then not going to the gym with the trainer.
Right.
I mean, it'd be you're like, okay, go. Why am I not losing weight? Well,
exactly. Okay, keep going. Do your thing.
Except for the trainer doesn't give you ways to simplify. You still got to do the full hard work. Like we make some of these hard things a lot easier.
Right.
You know, so there is that benefit there.
But it's also like you're showing people the right way to do the exercises, so you're getting the biggest ROI on the effort.
Absolutely. And so setting goals, I mean, I don't care what you're doing. If you set a goal, you're more likely to achieve the thing, right?
Absolutely.
So that's what we're doing here. So this is like a summary of the budget that you're seeing in these little tabs here, the way we have them organized. It's really cool. You'll see in my existing clients that have been with me a while, they'll build pro formas for potential restaurants that they're going to buy. And they'll have all kinds of different budgets for like, maybe I'm going to buy this restaurant. Let me do a budget to see if I want to buy it. I like the lease on this. Let's plug in my concept with this lease and this square footage, and what does it look like, and what do I need to do to make this investment work for me? So you'll see a lot of like projections and pro formas built in there, as well as direct operating budgets for their restaurants. So here I'm going to go in and edit this budget here. So we're going to go and view and edit the budget, and it's going to load up here. We're in Chrome right now, so it's operating in Chrome. Restaurant Systems Pro works best in Chrome. This is showing a budget with actuals, so I'm actually going to uncheck the actuals and kind of start from the beginning on this. And at the top, you can see we have a yearly target for this restaurant. This example restaurant here, we're looking at about a $3 million restaurant. And then you'll see we have different sales levels that are happening each year as you go across the top, right? What we'll do is with the restaurant
each year or each month?
Each month for the year. Yeah. So there's the January, February, March. It's what we'll do is when we take a new restaurant on, they may not have books. And so we'll just go, okay, well, let's pull your POS numbers from that month, and let's at least start with sales at the top and go right on down your budget, and we'll start pulling your bills and get all that. And then we'll get your books caught up eventually. So that you can pay taxes, right?
Yeah. But when's the best time to plant a tree? 20 years ago. When's the next best time?
Right now. Yep. So that's exactly what we're doing here. When we start off, we look at your categories and we set this up. This is kind of where we give you a suggested chart of accounts for your restaurant. We're not big sticklers except for a few things that we're going to say, hey, this is one way you have to do it. And this goes into if we're going to be analyzing in the network, analyzing P&Ls and going in there. I guess if you're listening to us at that time, probably go to the network if you want your P&L analyzed, and we'll do it. I'm going to add in there too that anybody that goes in and gets their P&L analyzed in those sessions, that will actually build you a budget. And even if you're not in my software, we can export this to Excel and you'll have a budget for your restaurant and new targets too. So we'll add that too, because I think they go hand in hand. Yeah. What's good of analyzing it if we're not going to do anything about it? I'm big on action and taking action on that.
And as we're recording this in May of 2024, we literally just announced this partnership in today's recording on the podcast, and we're figuring it out. Full transparency, like we don't know exactly the order of operation and how to get on a list to I think my dream is that it gets so busy that we're going to have to have a list.
A waiting list?
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
So anyway,
and if we do that, I have a whole team of people that can do the same thing I can do.
All right, beautiful.
So that's pretty cool, right? So that's definitely helpful. And we're good at doing them. We've done a lot. I've done thousands and thousands of these. And so it's really, really second nature to us. When we look at this, So we're looking at the mix. So here's how the sales come in. These percentages here, you're looking at the mix. So this 80.5% that you're looking at right here, this means that if you did $10,000 in that night, that you would do $88,050 in food sales for that night. So that's your mix of sales as they come in. And then we talked about how this is one of the things where we stand firm, because sometimes we'll look at these and the restaurant owner will have just like deposits from the bank as their sales. So they just have sales, or they'll have it to where they'll have food sales and catering sales, and then they have, it could be different things where they just broken out to where sometimes they'll show sales tax there, and it's like sales tax doesn't belong on an income statement or P&L. It belongs on the balance sheet because that's a liability. You collect that money, it's a liability, and so sometimes people will put it in as revenue, and it's not. We don't want to calculate your food costs or revenue off sales tax that you collected, right? So those are the things that we'll clean up on a chart of accounts to make sure that people are going to get a good report card for their business. Essentially, a lot of people look at their P&L as just a way for themselves to pay taxes. We want to be a report card on how you're operating that'll give you feedback on what you need to do better and how you can operate to do better, and all the systems tie into that.
It's your pulse.
Yeah,
it's literally the lifeline. It's the numbers don't lie.
Yeah.
Are we healthy today? Are we not healthy today? What's the P&L say?
Right. Exactly. And so that's what we're doing here. And so when you're looking at this, we have all of these revenue centers. Okay. So when I click on cost of goods sold down here, you're going to see that we have corresponding cost of goods sold center for every revenue center. So if I have a food sale, I have a food cost that corresponds. If I have a liquor sale, I have a liquor cost. Now, sometimes restaurants will make the mistake in this area and they'll say, hey, I have meat purchases and produce purchases and dry goods purchases or catering purchases or all these different things. And one of the things I like to do to teach it is like, okay, let's say I'm selling a plate of chicken wings, okay? When I ring that into my POS system, that is creating a food sale in my system. And sometimes people make the mistake of tracking revenue as like appetizer revenue or entree revenue, when really I want a report card for my business. So if I'm using heavy cream in ranch dressing and I'm putting in mashed potatoes, well, I'm using that same ingredient in entree revenue and in appetizer revenue, and just as an example, right? So we want to be able to have our costs associated with the revenue. So an example of chicken wings, if I was looking at poultry and dairy and dry goods, well, I would generate revenue with that sale of food, but I would have dairy costs in the blue cheese, I would have poultry costs in the chicken wings, I'd have dry goods in the spices and maybe the Frank's Red Hot that they're using, and I'd have produce and the celery and carrots. So I have all of these different cost centers that are reporting. There's no proportions that will tell me if I'm doing good or bad on those costs, right? Poultry might go up, but it maybe just because the cost of poultry went up, not because I'm buying more. Maybe I just started selling more chicken sandwiches or more chicken wings. And I would think that I was doing bad on my cost, but I'm just selling more of that item. And so I'm not necessarily doing bad.
So you want all the ingredients associated with the transaction of that certain menu item.
Yep, exactly. So food is always food. The example too is like, remember I talked about catering. We don't have catering sales and food sales separated, because let's say I'm doing some catering, right? And I have a party, I have a $2,000 party, and I'm going to go off site and I'm going to do that party. Well, let's say we make mashed potatoes and we serve those same mashed potatoes in the restaurant. Well, I'm not going to get into cost accounting where I say, oh, this portion of this case of potatoes is going towards those catering sales revenue costs, right? And this portion of the case of potatoes is going to go towards restaurant sales, right? We're not going to get into that unless you start doing about $1 million of catering. Then cost accounting can be worth it, where you have separate inventory for catering, separate purchases, all that. But most of the time when a restaurant's doing catering, they're all using the same products that are on the walk-in for the same menu. And if you start to try to get to where you're trying to count how much of a case in my books of potatoes went to catering versus food, you just give up and you're not going to be able to accomplish your goals. So when you look at this, we're looking at liquor costs against liquor sales, I can track on you see the difference between we have draft beer and bottle beer.
Yeah.
On every invoice, I can track every keg that I buy very easily, right? And then I can track every draft beer that I sell in my POS system as well. Like wine sales, I see people, I've seen this before. I've seen every example you can think of, but where somebody said, hey, I have wine by the glass revenue and wine by the bottle revenue on my P&L. Well, when I buy a case of wine, I don't know if I'm selling it by the glass or by the bottle at that point, right? It's not until the sale happens I know I'm going to pop open and sell this by the glass or anything like that. So when that happens, we want to just have wine purchase against a wine sale. So wine by the glass and wine by the bottle will be part of it. And when you start costing it all out, you can come up with the ideal costs on all of it. There. So when I'm looking at this is important. When I'm looking at this 26% food cost budget here, this is only this 55,384 is 26% of 213. It's not 26% of the 265 top line. Each category is its own percentage. So when I see 19% liquor costs, it's 19% of the 12,000 in liquor that's projected to be used there. Okay.
Got it.
You'll see that this is red. Whenever it's red in our budgeting system, that means it's part of prime cost. So prime cost is the measure which we measure all restaurants. It could be different for every restaurant, though. Prime cost is the same.
So you're talking about these items here all being red.
They're red. Yeah, that means they're prime costs in our system. And I could look at a pizzeria, and the pizzeria might be 20% cost of goods sold, 35% labor, because we have all the labor that's going into producing it and everything that's out there. It's still a 55 prime cost, and it still works. But then I could have a steakhouse that's 40% cost of goods sold, but because it's a $100 steak that cost me $40 to put on the plate, my sales are really high, so that means my labor would be lower, right? So I could have a 15% labor, 40% cost of goods sold, still 55 prime cost. That works in my equation, right?
Got it.
So a lot of consultants out there will say, hey, you're supposed to be a 30% cost of goods sold, and if anybody ever tells you what your food cost should be, it just shows they're really not an expert in the industry. It's each individual restaurant, their food cost should be for what their menu is, what their concept is, what their pricing is against all there. So it's different for everybody. What is the same is prime cost for everyone. And that's a good measure. Too, what's cool about that number too, this is kind of outside. I'm getting outside the software a little bit here. I know. But outside the software here, but I was reading a book, and it's a real page turner, but the analysis of of financial statements written by Warren Buffett's daughter about how her father chooses.
Yeah, you've mentioned that a couple times.
Yeah, and it's like, well, I mention it because it just when Warren Buffett backs up the work you're doing, then it's there. And what he said was that 45% gross margin creates wealth. And 55% prime cost is a 45% gross margin. And so what we are teaching in restaurants, one, I saw the proof in the pudding, but just like, Warren Buffett agrees with us on this as well too. So
awesome.
So we go through this. This is all those categories. Then we look at payroll, and this is where we start getting into break-even point calculations and things like that. So the second part of prime cost here is that we have salaries and labor to look at. And that's where we start getting in where the software will calculate break-even point. In my teachings, I'm not going to get into it now, but I teach the basics of calculating break-even and why break-even is so important. What's cool about our software is it just does it for you automatically. I do teach the math behind it and the concept behind it in my trainings, and so it's helpful in understanding it. But the software does do it automatically, and what you're seeing here is we have these fixed costs as we go across here, right? So you'll see that there's management salaries and there's monthly salaries that are the same no matter what, okay? And then you get here, we're looking at line cooks and dishwashers. All the hourly labor is percentages, right? And so if everybody's looking at this, don't think like, oh, that says line cooks are 10%. That's what my restaurant's supposed to be. Like we talked about with Prime, it's different for every restaurant. I'll have restaurants that are 5% labor because this is off total sales. And what if my mix is 45% food, 55% liquor, right? It's going to change the amount of kitchen labor that I'm using, right? So that's an important thing to understand. Don't look at this as a standard of where your restaurant's supposed to be. It's just an example of budgeting. And what we do is we start to look at where you're at and get to where you need to go.
So this 10% is saying that 10% of your total labor expense is going to line cooks.
Yep.
1% of your total labor expense is going towards dishwasher.
Yep.
Okay.
Now, if you're wondering, like, I'm going to show you something in a minute. See how this is not like 10% of this would be 26,540 if I'm looking at the math directly. I'm going to show you in a minute why that number is actually not showing that. It has to do with your actual numbers that come in. Okay. It'll change based on the actual numbers that come in. So if anybody's looking at that going, wait a minute, that's not 10% of that number. If I go here, this is 10% of this number, but I put in some actual numbers here, so it's changing it too. I'll explain that in a second. But we target and budget, like these are all our budget targets. We use your history to predict your future, and we start to look at efficiencies and how much they're getting paid. Like it may be different, the efficiencies. If you're in Florida versus the West Coast, it's, $18 an hour minimum wage, and you have cooks making $25 an hour in some states. You might go to Texas and they're at the peak end $18, $19, $20 an hour. So yeah, it varies. So we have all these targets that you'll see. Those are all red. Sometimes we can change it. So you'll see here how these are black. We can either say, hey, you're an owner. How do you right click on a Mac? There we go. I figured it out. So if I'm going here and I want to change this back, I'm going to go, all right, there. I changed it to where I'm an owner salary. And this is for owners that don't have to be part of the day-to-day. They may be getting a salary in their restaurant, but they're not a key turner. They're not responsible for being there. And some people are like, I don't really know. Like, I'm there every day, but do I have to be there every day? Like, I'm leading my team. And the way you answer that is you say, hey, if I was to leave my business for 6 months, would I have to hire somebody to replace me? If the answer is no, you could probably not count yourself in prime cost. You're not part of production. You're still there leading your team. Your salary's in the budget, all those things. But if the answer is, if I was to leave for 6 months, I'd for sure need to hire somebody to replace me, then your salary is part of production, and you need to be included in your own prime costs there. So
great advice.
So we help with that and getting it set. That's part of budgeting and helping people navigate those sorts of things and setting the targets. Down here, we budget for taxes here. There's other things in here, some of that are blank, but 941 taxes, that's a very important part of restaurants, and it's actually not a fair part of the restaurant business. So like I have all my employees here in the building. I have I'll pay them 8% on my payroll taxes. That'll cost me 8%. So if somebody made $1,000, then I'm going to pay 8% or more on that check. So let's say I have $1,000 employee here and $1,000 employee, a server at a restaurant, let's say. Then that person goes home with a $750 check. There's the employer portion of taxes taken out and the employee taxes that are taken out of that, right? So what happens is when those taxes are taken out, the employer matches those taxes to the government. So now that employee cost me $1,250 and they went home with $750. Okay, that's just normal business, which a lot of people don't think about. Restaurant owners think of that, but a lot of everyday people don't think about that employee just cost $1,250 and they're only going home with $7. The government made $500, they made $750, and they worked all this time, right? So the next part that's really difficult is, let's say I made $500 in wages. I made $500 in tips, $250 in wages. So I still made I made $750 in tips, $250 in wages. So I made $1,000, right? But I already went home with that $750. So now I have a $0 check, and I still pay taxes on all. The company still pays taxes on all those tips that you earned. So that's why you'll see here a budget of like 15% of payroll for payroll taxes. And now there is a thing here, and where I have our in-house CPA, we'll get it, where you can actually get a tax credit on those extra taxes that you pay as a restaurateur. So, send me an email, fred@restaurantsystemspro.net. We'll send you the information, and you can get some help with that.
But in order to get that tax credit, you need to be able to track and have these systems in place.
Yeah, you do. Now, your payroll system will be able to track it, but it's an important thing to know that you can go get that money as well. All right, so we're going to go through here real quick. I'm going to go through operating expenses really quickly. You'll see that we go through here. You'll see we have fixed expenses and variable expenses. A quick rule of thumb in here is I want your rent to be between 6 and 8%. If it's not, then it's going to eat into our potential profit. If you're, that's where we're at too. So you'll see that we have some of these as semi-fixed expenses. So you'll see I have electrical as fixed. That's because, if my electric bill might change every single month. It's not exactly fixed, but it's not changing based on the number of customers. It's changing based on how much I'm using my AC because of the weather, right?
Got it.
But things like credit card processing, you're going to find are Like right here, credit card discounts. We have those in as a variable expense. Those will go up and down. The more sales I do, the more credit card processing fees I'll have.
Got it. So when I'm coming in here, am I manipulating all these numbers, or like who? Like,
so this is hard. So the things that are hard that you'll have to be done one time, as a service, we do them for you.
Got it.
Okay. Things that are repeatable that have to be done all the time, we make sure that we don't do those for you, and we teach you really well to do them. Right. Okay. So updating your budgets, we'll get those started for every single person we work with. We do it for you to get it started because it's hard.
Because this to me is intimidating. So to work this all out.
Yep. That's one of the things that makes us a true SaaS. A lot of people say they are, but we truly are a software as a service, and that you get way more than just a software. You're getting the coaching and help to go with it too. So all these things, like you just provide us some numbers where you're at. If you don't have books or numbers, we meet with you and walk through how we're going to get them there. So you have all these expenses in here. We go down and we predict your bottom line. You can see I've changed some numbers in here, so I'm going to refresh this, and it will refresh the numbers. And we start to look at a budgeted bottom line here. And when we go here, we can expand this out, and it's going to give me some more information. All right, so we click this bottom line right here, and we can scroll down, and we have a lot more information here. Okay, this will open up and give me like what my prime cost is. You'll see a 50. I told you 55. That's a 54.82. When you click on this, it gives you your net profit cash running total. I'm actually going to be meeting with a restaurant owner this year that's struggling right now with paying their bills. So I'm actually going to build one of these, but it's going to be 52 weeks. This is 12 months here, but it's going to be this same program in 52 periods. So he's literally budgeting every single week because he's in crisis and needs to make sure that he's managing that cash. This net profit running total will be basically reflecting what his bank account will be, and you can use it as cash flow to predict your bank's bank.
Now, off screen, you can't see it. There's a team of people working who are doing data entry right now.
Yep.
So if I were the minimum to get the Restaurant Systems Pro software where you have all these systems in the back end, that's $299?
$399. $399, yep.
But if you're like, the idea of entering data all day, like you don't have to do the data entry. There's another service on top of that, or is that included?
Yeah, so that's what they're doing over there. That's only $300 a month to have a real person in there working on your invoices and getting them in there.
Okay.
And that is where, if you have multiple restaurants, it goes $399 to $999 to $99 for each additional. The invoicing, it's real people looking at it. A lot of the other invoicing companies out there, it's all 100% technology. What happens is things get messed up if it's 100% technology. You gotta catch that was like, oh, even though the vendor sent that as the ground beef as a case this one time, when normally they send it by the pound, well, now I can't have ground beef that's $75 a pound because it was entered in, that product was entered in, by the case instead of by the pound, right?
Got it.
And so there's a person reviewing that. We do have the AI technology. We do have the EDI connection to your vendors and all that, but it's to make sure that your data stays up to date and correct. We do have a person there reviewing each of those too. You can see that she's got invoices pulling up on her screen, and that they're making sure that data is correct before it goes into your systems there. So we have all this information. The biggest thing now is getting to this part here where I just click this button and the actual numbers come up. And this is where we could import your actuals can be imported from QuickBooks. So if you're in another accounting software, your numbers could be imported into here. There's a thing here that other systems don't have. It's called flex budgeting. And what that means is why I was talking about earlier, while this cost of goods sold number was a little bit different. You see here that this, let me just change this to make this. I'm going to just change the number here to 2. Oops.
I don't think you wanted $2 in there.
No, let's do 200,000. 2 more. There we go. Okay. So now we have 200,000 in sales, right? So if you'll immediately see how this changed to 52,000, the budget, it's because after the fact, if I had done 300,000, it would give me more money to spend, which makes sense. If I did more than I expected, my kitchen manager should have bought more food. So this is this is a better report card for how you actually ran. Every other system out there, especially QuickBooks, that's only fixed numbers, and the restaurant's full of variable expenses. And so as you go through your expenses, you need to know, what I should have spent based on what I did do in sales? What should my labor have been based on what I did in sales? If it's just based on this fixed number, we don't want our success or failure to be dependent on how well we predict the future.
Yeah. And this is a lot of profit first from Mike McCallow's school of thought baked into the software.
Yeah, it is. And for us, we did this before we met him, but when I saw it, I was like, oh, we're doing this. It may not be separate bank accounts like what he teaches that you're putting everything and separating out, but we are giving you all those segment things, which actually makes sense for a business when you're delegating it.
You're allocating cash flow, and whatever's left over determines your operational expense and determines your growth.
Yeah.
So I always say people and cash flow determine growth.
Mm-hmm.
So do you have the people to execute the job?
Right.
Do you have the money in the bank to buy or to get the people and to
allow them to do their job and make buying decisions.
Purchase the assets to keep going. So
kitchen managers shouldn't have to come to me and ask for money
to
go to take care of it. They know where they're at. If they need to go outside of those parameters, then that's when they have to come.
This is your budget. This is what you have to work with.
Yep, and you can freely work within these budgets. If you start to go over it, what happens is we catch it in real time. So if I start going over my spending budget halfway through the month, normally people are waiting 6 weeks later to get the numbers back from the accountant and go, oh gosh, darn it, we lost money in that month. What are we going to do about it? This is in real time. You know if you're overspending immediately on that purchase order.
And what I love about this too is, like, I think about open book management, right? Like, how easy does this make open book management?
Yep.
Hey guys, our food sales were 200,000. If we get you can see exactly how you start manipulating these numbers. You can start affecting your budget, and then but I like how it's like, if you want to you can see if your liquor sales are down, or you're not pushing the draft bottle, or your bottle sales are down. Like, you can literally, I don't know. I just think it's so important. It's just like that idea of open book management, but by line item, not necessarily line item, but by category.
Absolutely. And there's also, like you said, the open book management, but sometimes people are really uncomfortable with that, right? So, but we have this variance report here, okay? And when I'm looking at the variance report, I can actually slice and dice this report based on somebody's level of responsibility, right? So let's say I'm maybe meeting with it's a new kitchen manager. We don't need to we want to share these numbers, but we don't want to share the whole thing. Even if it's not that we want to keep them secret, sometimes it's overwhelming to just see it all, right? And it could become difficult. So if, let's say I'm meeting with a kitchen manager, I can go, okay, I'm going to share the food sales, the food cost, and I'm going to go to look at dishwashers and line cooks and prep cooks, but I don't need to share the rest of the front of house labor, right? And then I can go, well, all this rent and all that's not really part of their purview, but I can go, all right, okay, they're purchasing these items, right? Maybe they're in charge of that and small wares and glass. This is what their level of responsibility is, right? And so I can create the items based on there, and maybe I'm just going. Maybe I don't need to share the bottom line there. I'm an advocate of actually sharing it, but not everybody there. But so you can slice and dice it. But I am definitely an advocate of being open book when it comes to that stuff. But now I can generate a report that's based just on that person's level of responsibility, and that's pretty cool in there too. So. That is an overview of budgeting. You can create copies. You can create certain scenarios where, hey, what happens if I lost $1 million in sales? Because I know that the road construction's coming in. What's that going to do to my business? What happens at my break-even point? What do I need to do about that? You can stay ahead of those things. What happens if I add the patio and I think I'm going to add 600? It's going to cost me this much, but I think I'm going to add 500,000 in sales. What does that budget look like? And you can create all just by hitting save as like you would any document. You can create copies of it and go from there and create different scenarios. There.
Beautiful. So we covered budgeting, Fred. Real quick, tell me what else you're going to take us through without getting into any detail. Just list all the things you're going to touch on next.
So we're going to touch on recipe costing cards, the details of them and the application of them. We're going to touch on inventory. We're going to touch on connecting our labor budgets to that big picture budget, so weekly labor budgets.
Got it.
Then scheduling, so we can compare to that, and then how to analyze within the shift. Then analyzing efficiencies and labor budgets, and more.
Got it. So what immediately comes to my mind is this idea of what gets measured gets managed. And the first, I think why you have such an impact on your clients and their their prime costs is like you just give them like a magnifying glass and like this like comb to to literally see exactly where all the money is going, and then I think it all starts with like having accurate costing.
Yeah.
So we saw the budget. We saw the budgeting. Now we're gonna go into the costing.
Yes.
Take it away.
Yep.